The waitress didn't panic during the robbery, and the boss of the Korean mafia, watching from the corner, instantly recognized her voice. Rain battered the windows as if the sky was trying to break in. The diner was nearly empty. A truck driver in the third booth, an old man with a newspaper, two students sharing a plate of French fries. Rachel Brown stood behind the counter filling the coffee machine when the door flew open and a man in a black mask entered with a gun. Everyone hit the floor. The truck driver collapsed, the students crawled under the table, the old man froze with his cup halfway to his mouth. Rachel didn't move. She stood behind the counter, hands flat on the surface, staring at the armed robber like you stare at rain when you're already soaked to the bone. No screams, no flinching, no wide eyes. Just a slow exhale and a voice so calm it made the robber hesitate. "You picked the wrong diner," she said, "and the wrong morning." In the corner booth, the man in the dark suit silently set down his coffee cup. His hand didn't tremble, his expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted, like a locked door cracking open from the inside. Han Jae didn't move, not even for the gun, because he knew that voice. The robber's hand was shaking. Rachel noticed it first, not the gun, but the hand. How his fingers couldn't fully grip the handle, how the barrel wavered left, then right, then back to center, like he couldn't decide where to aim. He was young, she could tell by his build, by how his sneakers were too clean for someone doing something this desperate. He'd probably stood outside for 20 minutes psyching himself up to enter. Rachel didn't step away from the counter. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't drop to the floor like the couple in the third booth, who huddled against each other on the linoleum, or the old man by the window, who'd spilled his coffee in the chaos. The other waitress, Diane, let out one yelp and vanished through the kitchen door so fast her order pad spun on the counter. Rachel just stood there, hands on the surface, watching. "Open the register," the robber said. His voice cracked on the second word. He pointed the gun at her face. She looked at him like you look at a leaky ceiling. Something to fix, not something that derails your day. "You picked the wrong diner," she said, "and the wrong morning." The robber blinked behind the mask. He hadn't expected words. He'd expected silence, or screams, or pleas, the three things people usually offer when a gun walks into a room. Rachel offered none of that. She offered eye contact and a voice so even the air around her felt heavier than it should. "I said open it." He stepped closer. The gun was now 60 centimeters from her forehead. His breath was loud and ragged through the mask fabric. Rachel tilted her head slightly. "Maybe $200? You came here armed for $200 on a Tuesday morning?" She paused. "You don't want to do this." It wasn't a plea. It wasn't pity. It was a statement, delivered with the flat certainty of a woman who'd seen enough bad decisions to spot one unfolding in real time. She said it like someone says the sky is gray. Without emotion, without investment, just a fact. In the corner booth, Han Jae didn't stir. His two men across from him had flinched at the first sight of the gun one reached inside his jacket. Jae raised a hand without looking. One gesture. "Stop." His men froze. Jae's eyes were locked on the woman behind the counter. Not the robber, not the gun, on her. On how she stood, on how her shoulders didn't hunch to her ears, on how her breath stayed even while everyone else in the diner had stopped breathing altogether. And then she spoke again, something low, something aimed at the robber that Jae couldn't quite make out. His hand paused halfway to his coffee cup. That voice. The room contracted. The rain on the windows turned to static noise. The fluorescent lights over the counter hummed at a frequency only he seemed to hear. Everything in the diner narrowed to one point. The sound of a woman's voice he hadn't heard in 7 years. A voice with no business in this diner. A voice he carried in his chest like a scar he'd never shown anyone. The robber backed toward the door, whatever quiet thing Rachel had said to him in that final low-pitch landing like a gut punch, though Jae couldn't hear it. It hit home. The kid's hand dropped. He spun, shoved through the door, and vanished into the rain. Sirens rose in the distance. Someone in the third booth was sobbing. The old man by the window was still on the floor. Rachel pulled a rag from her apron and wiped the counter where the old man's coffee had spilled. She topped off the abandoned mug. She picked up the order pad, clicked her pen, and turned to the next table, as if the robbery had been just the weather. Something that passed and left no trace. Jae stood. His men stood with him. He left money on the table, enough to cover 10 lunches, and walked out without a word. He didn't speak to her. He didn't approach the counter. He didn't ask her name. But he sat in the back of his car under the rain, still silent, hands folded in his lap. His driver knew better than to ask. 7 years. That voice. That same voice. He'd found her 7 years ago. Han-jae sat in a diner at 3 a.m., thinking about death. He was 22. His father had been dead 6 days. The funeral had been in a language he barely spoke, in a country he barely knew, paid for with money he didn't have. The people who'd come, his father's partners, the ones in dark suits who spoke in low voices and never met anyone's eyes, had arrived and left too quickly, offering not one word of comfort. They came to confirm the death, to measure the vacuum, to decide which parts of the empire were worth salvaging and which could be left to rot. Jay was one of the parts they left. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He had $40. His apartment, if you could call the unheated room above the dry cleaners an apartment, waited 3 blocks away, but he couldn't go back there. Couldn't sit in that silence. Couldn't look at the walls his father had leaned against on his last visit, 3 weeks before the heart attack, when he'd looked at him with something that might have been pride or might have been pity and said nothing at all. So he sat in the diner, corner booth. Coffee he didn't touch. Rain on the windows. The waitress stopped checking on him after an hour. The cook scraped the grill out back. The place was empty except for Jay and that particular kind of silence that only exists at 3 a.m., when the world forgets you're alive. He thought of the bridge 6 blocks east. He'd passed it on the way here and lingered by the railing 11 minutes. He counted. 11 minutes staring at the black water, thinking how easy it'd be to stop carrying the weight of a name that had given him nothing but debts, enemies, and a dead father in a foreign country. He didn't jump, but he didn't leave, because he wanted to live. He left because his feet moved before his mind decided. Muscle memory, survival instinct, body choosing for the brain. He ended up in the diner because it was the first place with lights on. The door opened. He didn't look up. Someone sat across from him. He still didn't look up. He assumed it was the waitress. Assumed she'd ask him to order or leave. Whatever you're thinking of doing, it can wait till morning. He looked up. She was young, maybe 20, black, beautiful in a way that wasn't trying, no makeup, hair pulled back, oversized college hoodie and backpack slung over one shoulder, like she'd come straight from the library, late shift, or both. Her eyes were tired but steady. She looked at him like no one had in weeks. Straight on, no agenda, no calculation. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Yeah, you do." Not unkind, just certain. He stared. She didn't flinch. Didn't look away. She sat there in that booth like she had every right, like sitting across from a stranger at 3 a.m. Was the most natural thing in the world. She stayed an hour. Didn't ask his name. Didn't ask what was wrong. Talked small things. The paper she was writing, the professor she hated, the song she'd heard on the way over she couldn't shake. She bought him a refill with crumpled bills pulled from her backpack, like money mattered and she was spending it anyway. She talked to him like he was a person in a diner, not a man on the edge of something awful. When she left, she zipped her backpack and said, "Get home safe." Like it was simple. Like staying alive was just what you do. She stepped out into the rain and didn't look back. Jay sat in that booth another hour. He didn't go to the bridge. He went home. He slept. He woke the next morning and started building the life that would make him untouchable. Every decision, every alliance, every ruthless calculation that followed, it all started that morning after a stranger sat across from him and told him to wait till morning. He never learned her name. Never saw her face again. But he heard her voice every damn day for 7 years. Now, in the back of a black car parked outside the diner under the rain, Han-jae picked up his phone. He called the one person in his organization who could find anyone. "Find her," he said. "Everything. This morning. All of it." He hung up, leaned back in the seat and closed his eyes. Rain drummed the roof. Behind his lids, he could still see her. Mid-20s, crumpled bills, tired eyes, steady voice. She hadn't recognized him. He was sure. For her, that night in the diner was a small kindness she'd probably forgotten by next week. For him, it was the reason he was still breathing. The video hit the internet 18 hours and 47 minutes later that evening. Rachel didn't know until Elijah showed her. He was on the couch with his laptop when she walked in the door, still smelling of coffee and grease, feet aching in cheap sneakers she'd meant to replace for 3 months. He turned the screen toward her, saying nothing. His face held that look that came when he didn't know whether to be proud or worried, the one that made him look just like their father. The footage was shaky, shot from under a table by a customer whose hands trembled so hard the frame jumped every few seconds. But Rachel was crystal clear. Standing behind the counter, hands flat on the surface, staring down a masked man with a gun like he was a minor inconvenience. The audio was muffled, but her voice cut through. Calm, level, unflappable. The caption read, "Waitress doesn't even flinch during armed robbery." It had 400,000 views. By morning, it'd be 2 million. Rachel watched once. Handed back the laptop. "Dinner," she said. Elijah stared. "Rah, you had a gun in your face. And now?" "Nothing." "What do you want to eat?" He opened his mouth to press. She gave him the look, the one that shut down arguments since he was 10 and she was 20, and she'd suddenly become responsible for both their lives. He shut his mouth. "Pizza," he said quietly. She ordered pizza. She showered. She sat on the edge of her bed 4 minutes with wet hair and hands clenched between her knees, eyes shut. Then she got up and ate 2 slices with Elijah while he did homework at the kitchen table. And neither of them mentioned the video again. The call from her boss came at 9 the next morning. Rachel was already in uniform, keys in hand, heading for the door. She picked up on the second ring. "Rachel, it's Dom." She knew from his voice. Knew before he said another word. The way she always knew from the tone, the hesitation, that particular quiet that came before someone delivered bad news they'd already decided wasn't their problem. "People are calling the diner," he said. "Reporters. Some viral shit. Had 3 calls this morning asking for you." Pause. "I can't have that kind of attention here. You get that?" She did. The diner ran on a razor's edge. Half the staff got paid under the table. Health inspections got settled with handshakes and envelopes. The kitchen wouldn't survive a film crew walking through the door. They were firing her not for the robbery, but because the robbery made people look. And the diner couldn't afford to be looked at. "I get it," she said. "Sorry, Rachel. You're a good worker. I just can't." "I get it, Dom." She hung up. Stood in her apartment hallway with keys in one hand, phone in the other, and let the silence hold her for exactly 3 seconds. Then she hung the keys on the hook. She took off the uniform. Hung it in the closet, though she'd never wear it again, because she was the kind of person who put things away right even when the floor was giving way beneath her. Elijah was at school. The apartment was quiet. Rachel sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and started job hunting. Waitress, hostess, barista, cashier. Anything that paid weekly and didn't ask too many questions. She updated her resume, mostly gaps and half-truths. College she never finished, years she couldn't explain, references she didn't have because every time she rebuilt her life, the old one burned down behind her. She sent 9 applications by noon. Lunched on cold pizza leftovers. 2 bites between apps. She didn't cry. Didn't call anyone. There was no one to call. By the time Elijah got home at 4, the uniform was stowed, dinner was prepped, and Rachel sat at the table like it was any other Tuesday. "How was school?" she asked. "Fine." "Work?" "Fine." He looked at her the way he always had. Like he knew she was lying but loved her too much to say it. She looked back the way she always did. Like everything was under control. It wasn't. But it would be. Always was. Rachel Brown didn't break. She adapted. She moved. She found the next handhold and gripped till her knuckles went white. Then found the next. That's what she did. That's what she did forever. The knock came Thursday afternoon, 2 days after the firing. Rachel was at the kitchen table circling job ads in the paper she'd grabbed from the laundromat because her laptop died that morning and she couldn't afford to fix it. She was still in the clothes she'd slept in, hair pulled back. She hadn't eaten since the night before because Elijah needed breakfast and there were 2 eggs left, and she wasn't going to be the one who ate them. She opened the door and knew right away. The suit was the first thing she saw. Dark, bespoke, the kind that cost more than 3 months' rent. Then the shoes, clean, polished, wrong for this hallway. Then the car parked on the street below, visible through the stairwell window. Black, long, sleek, with a driver behind tinted glass, like a movie. They were on the 4th floor, no elevator, in a building where the elevator hadn't worked since March. The man in the suit was Korean, mid-30s, tall, still in a way that had nothing to do with patience and everything to do with control. His face was calm. Hands at his sides. He looked at her like people look at what they've been hunting. Not with surprise, but confirmation. "Rachel Brown," he said. "Obviously," she said. He blinked once. "I haven't even said anything yet. I see the suit. I see the car. Whatever you're selling, whatever you're offering, whatever you think you know about me from that internet video, I don't need it." She started closing the door. He didn't stick out a hand to stop her, didn't step forward. He just spoke. "I own a restaurant in Midtown. Legal. Clean. Needs someone with experience. Pay 3 times what the diner offered. Better hours." Rachel paused, the door 15 centimeters from shut. She could see him through the crack. One eye, half jaw, tie knot that probably cost more than her fridge. "Why me?" "Because I saw how you handled that diner. And I need someone who doesn't panic in my restaurant." Rachel almost laughed. Almost. The kind of laugh that lives in the back of your throat when something so absurd it circles to offensive. A man in a $10,000 suit shows up at her door offering her a waitressing gig because he saw a video of her not crying during a hold-up. "I don't know you," she said. "I don't know what you really want. I don't take favors from men I don't know because every favor I've ever taken came with a price I didn't agree to." She said it without heat, without anger, just the flat, clear tone of a woman who'd learned the hard way that kindness from powerful men was rarely kind. The man looked at her a long beat. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled a business card. Plain white, name and number. He slid it through the door crack. "If you change your mind," he said. She took it. He left it on the floor in front of her door. Nodded once. Turned and walked the hall without looking back. She listened to his steps on the stairs. Even, unhurried, the gait of a man nothing in life had ever rushed. She shut the door. Locked it. Went back to the kitchen table, sat, picked up the pen, eyed the circled ads, and didn't think about the card on the floor for 2 days. The rent notice came Saturday, slipped under her door in a yellow envelope she didn't need to open to know what it said. Elijah's left shoe sole had a hole he stuffed with newspaper and thought she didn't notice. The fridge held mustard, half a loaf of bread, and a water bottle. She had $34 in the bank and 9 applications out and 0 callbacks. She sat at the table Saturday night after Elijah went to bed. Apartment dark. Yellow envelope insistent. Business card still on the entry floor where Jay left it because she hadn't picked it up or tossed it, and she didn't want to think what that meant. She thought about it anyway. At 11, she went to the door. Picked up the card. Looked at the name. Looked at the number. Stood there a long time, card in one hand, phone in the other. Then she dialed. He answered on one ring, like he'd been waiting. "Job," she said. "Just the job. Nothing else." "Job," he said. She hung up without goodbye. Put the card in the kitchen drawer. Went to bed. And across the city, in a high-rise, Jay set the phone on the desk, leaned back in his chair, and exhaled for the first time in 2 days. The restaurant was called M. 2nd floor of a midtown building that looked like nothing outside and everything inside. Dark wood, clean lines, low lighting that made every table feel like a private conversation. Korean menu, affluent crowd, staff trained to move like ghosts. Rachel started Monday. Arrived 15 minutes early, tied her apron with the ease of a woman who'd done it since 19, memorized the floor plan before anyone sat in her section. End of first shift, she knew every waiter's name, every table number, which dishes cooked slow. End of first week, the floor manager stopped checking her sections because there was nothing to check. She was good at this. Always had been. Not because she loved it, but because she refused to be bad at anything that fed her brother. She moved through the lunchroom like she moved through everything. Precise, controlled, a wall between her and every person in the room so flawless most folks didn't even know it was there. She didn't flirt with the owner. Didn't ask about the men in dark suits who sometimes came through the back door. Didn't linger after shift. Didn't chat up the bartender. Didn't do any of the things people do when they're trying to fit in somewhere. She clocked in. Worked. clocked out. She went home to Elijah and noticed everything. He had an office on the 3rd floor, glass walls overlooking the lunchroom below. He came 2-3 nights a week. His people thought he was doing business. He was. But he also watched the floor. Watched her. Obviously not like men usually watch women. With hunger, with ownership, with the need to be noticed by the one doing the looking. He watched her like he watched rivals across a negotiation table. Attentive, patient, that particular focus of someone trying to puzzle out something that didn't fit his existing categories. Rachel didn't fit. Everything in Jay's orbit hummed on one frequency. Deference, caution, the constant low buzz of people trying to stay in his good graces. Rachel hummed on no frequency. She didn't change her voice when she knew he was near. Didn't smile more. Didn't speak less. Didn't square her shoulders. Treated him exactly like anyone else in the building. Professional courtesy and absolutely nothing else. It threw him off balance. He wasn't a man easily thrown. The scheduling incident happened 3rd week. Jay came down to the floor on a packed Friday night service. Something glitched in reservations. Double book that had 2 parties arriving same time, same table. Floor manager sweating. Host frozen. He stepped in, started reshuffling the seating chart himself, sliding names with the authority of someone whose calls got followed no questions. That won't work, said Rachel. The room didn't go quiet. The air did. Floor manager stared at the floor. Host stopped breathing. 2 waiters at the bar turned heads slow, like witnesses to something they weren't sure they wanted to see. Rachel stood 3 feet from Jay, balancing a tray on one hand, face saying she hadn't noticed the room temp drop 30 degrees. She pointed her free hand at the chart. Table 9's got a regular who always sits there Fridays. Move her and she'll bitch to your manager a month straight. Put the second party at 12. Same size, they won't clock the difference. She said it like she said everything. Even, certain, no apologies, like being right mattered more than being careful, like the fact everyone in the room feared the man she was correcting hadn't occurred to her or just plain didn't matter. Jay looked at her. She looked back. Tray didn't waver. Eyes didn't drop. 3 seconds passed. He eyed the chart. Slid the second party to 12. Said nothing. Headed back to the stairs. Rachel delivered drinks. Room exhaled. Floor manager mopped his brow and sank like his knees buckled. That night, after last customer left, lights up, staff scattered into cold night. Jay sat alone in his 3rd floor office. Lunchroom below dark. Chair across his desk empty. Building silent. He thought about how she'd said it. That won't work. No hesitation. No softening. No fear. He almost smiled. Didn't. But close. It started small. Rachel didn't notice at first because she was trained not to. Years of keeping head down, walls up, focus on the only things that mattered. Job, pay, Elijah. Everything else was noise. Everything else was a door she didn't need to open. But the small things kept happening. First time was Wednesday. Rachel closing shift, wiping tables, flipping chairs, running the checklist the floor manager left on the tablet. Restaurant empty. Kitchen dark. Thought she was alone till she heard a chair creak 3rd floor and glanced up through the glass office walls, saw Jay at his desk, pen in hand, stack of papers in front, look of a man with nowhere else to be. She went back to wiping tables. 10 minutes later, he came down with 2 mugs. Set one on the table she'd just cleaned. Tea, no milk, no sugar. She hadn't told him how she took it. He'd seen her make it for herself 3 times in the break room and remembered. You didn't have to, she said. I know, he said. Sat across with his mug and said nothing more. They sat in empty restaurant 20 minutes. She finished her tea. He finished his. Talked nothing. Rain, the 5th Avenue construction delaying deliveries. The customer that night who sent back the same dish 3 times then tipped 40%. Rachel told the story no smile, but something like it in her voice. Jay listened like he always listened. Fully, like what she said was the only sound in the world. She didn't ask about the men coming through the back door. Didn't ask about the phone calls he took in Korean, jaw tight, voice low. Didn't ask any of it because she knew boundaries better than most. She'd built enough to spot when others carried second meanings. Second time was Friday. Same closing routine. Empty restaurant. He came down. No tea this time. Just sat at the bar while she finished, opened his laptop, worked quiet while she ran checklist. No talk 30 minutes. Should have been awkward. Wasn't. Third time, she clocked his hand. He reached for his mug, sleeve rode up, she saw bruises on his knuckles. Deep purple fading yellow at edges, the kind from punching a cabinet. Looked half-second. Didn't stop wiping the bar. Didn't look at his face. You need ice, she said. He tugged the sleeve down. I'm fine. You're not. It's swollen. Ice it when you get home or it'll be worse tomorrow. Said it like she said everything. Straight, matter of fact, like tending a bruised hand was just practical info, not something deeper. Jay looked at her when she said it and something shifted in his face. Not surprise, not ungrateful, something quieter. The look of a man with 100 people around him constant and none noticing when he hurt. He iced it when he got home. Didn't tell her he did. Rachel rode the train home that night. Elijah asleep. Apartment dark. Dropped her bag by the door and sat on bed edge, no light. Shoes still on, coat still on. Sat hands on knees and felt something shift under her chest skin. Slow, warm, dangerous. Recognized it right off. Attraction, the quiet but traitorous pull of gravity starting to care about someone. First thread tied that, if she let it, would weave into something she couldn't cut without bleeding. Felt it before. Remembered exactly how it ended. Kicked off shoes. Shucked coat. Lay in bed staring ceiling telling herself it was nothing. Just tea, just quiet, just a bruised hand she happened to notice. But sleep didn't come easy. And when it finally did, she dreamed of an empty restaurant and a man who remembered how she took her tea. Karen didn't knock. He leaned on the buzzer till Elijah opened because Karen always worked like that. Not force, but persistence, slow inexorable pressure of a man who knew patience was just another kind of control. Rachel was in the kitchen when she heard Elijah say, "She doesn't want to see you." Both voices firm, but his was young, and she heard the strain in it. Sound of a 17-year-old boy trying to be a wall when he was still learning to be a door. She stepped around the corner and saw Karen in the hall, and her body did something her mind had no business allowing. She didn't freeze like at the diner. Calm, deliberate, controlled. This was different. Full system shut down. Her feet stopped. Hands stopped. Breath stopped. Every muscle in her body locked into a pose she hadn't held in 2 years, but her bones remembered like a language she'd thought forgotten. Karen hadn't changed. That was worst. Looked exactly same. Tall, lean, handsome in the way that made people trust him before they knew better. His smile same. Easy, warm, the kind that made you feel chosen. Till you realized it was a leash. Rah, he said like hello, like 2 years hadn't passed, like last time she saw him she wasn't packing a bag at 4 a.m. With hands shaking so bad she couldn't zip it. Go, she said. But the word came out wrong. Too soft, too thin. The voice that stared down an armed robber in the diner, steady, unflinching, carved from stone, vanished. In its place the voice Karen built over 3 years. Small, careful, the one that asked permission before speaking. He walked into the apartment uninvited. Didn't touch her. Never needed to. Just filled space like always. With his body, his height, his ease, his certainty every room he entered belonged to him. Saw your video, he said. You're famous now. He scanned the apartment. Tiny kitchen, second-hand furniture, crack in the ceiling she couldn't patch. His eyes inventoried it all, and she felt him doing the math, the quiet tally of a man measuring how far she'd fallen to remind her she'd never climb out. Still doing this? He said. Not a question. Elijah stood behind Rachel, fists balled at sides, jaw clenched, and she felt his anger radiating heat. He was 17, built like their father, and he hated Karen with a clarity Rachel envied, because her own feelings for the man standing in her kitchen were so tangled she couldn't find the ends. You need to leave, said Elijah. Karen didn't look at him. Looked at Rachel. Always looked at Rachel because he always knew. She was the lock, everyone else just furniture. Just came to check on you, he said, soft, tender, that voice that came after the silence, after the cold, after days ignoring her till she craved warmth so bad she'd take any version of his, even the one that burned. Rachel said nothing. Stood in her own kitchen, her own apartment, Said nothing because her throat wouldn't open, voice wouldn't come, and the woman who told a robber he'd picked wrong morning was nowhere in sight. Karen stayed 6 minutes. Talked. She didn't. When he left, he brushed her shoulder at the door. Just a touch, just enough, and she flinched so hard Elijah made a sound behind her like something in him snapped. Door shut. Rachel didn't move. Elijah was already in the kitchen, digging from the junk drawer the card she thought she'd hidden. Dialed the restaurant main line because it was the only number he had besides school friends or the pizza place. Jay arrived 20 minutes later. Alone, no car, no driver. Knocked once, soft. Elijah opened, stepped aside wordless. Rachel sat at the kitchen table, hands flat on surface, eyes dry. Looked exactly like the diner. Still, composed, unreadable. But Jay saw what everyone else missed. Faint tremor in her left hand, how her jaw clenched so tight the muscle twitched, how her eyes fixed on a wall spot that wasn't there. She wasn't calm. She was holding herself together with everything she had, and it cost her every ounce of strength she possessed. He left quiet, said Elijah from the hall. Jay nodded. Didn't sit. Didn't move to her. Stood in kitchen doorway and waited till Rachel finally spoke. Her voice low, shaky, furious. Don't, she said. I didn't say anything. Don't look at me like that. Don't act like you need to fix it. I don't need you here. I didn't call you. I didn't ask for this. Her voice cracked on the last word. Not grief, rage. At Karen for showing, at Elijah for calling, at Jay for standing in her kitchen with a face that said he saw her, really saw her. Not the diner woman, not the unflinching waitress, but the woman under that, the one who'd frozen in her own home because a man she'd left 2 years ago walked in the door and her body forgot every wall she'd built since. She was furious at herself for freezing, for going small, for becoming the version of her he'd dismantled brick by brick over 2 years, and in 6 minutes. Jay didn't argue. Didn't leave. Stood in her doorway and took every word like she'd taken the gun at the diner. Unflinching, letting it land, letting it stay. Then he spoke, quiet, no defense. I'm not here because I think you're weak, he said. I'm here because 7 years ago, a woman I never met saw me through a window at 3 a.m. and walked into a diner she had no reason to enter. I was 22. My father had just died. I had nothing. I was deciding whether to keep living. Rachel's hand loosened on the doorframe. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She sat across from me. Jay went on. Didn't ask my name. Didn't ask what was wrong. Just sat there and talked to me like a person. Bought me coffee with money I could tell she didn't have. Stayed an hour and when she left, said something I never forgot. He looked at her, not the diner woman, not the video woman, at her. That woman was you, Rachel. The hallway shrank. Light from her apartment fell on them in a yellow slash splitting the floor in half. Rachel looked at him, jaw tight, eyes wet, but nothing fell. I don't remember you, she whispered. I know. I don't remember your face. I know. But you remember that night. Memory hit. She could see it fuzzy, not full, but fragments. Diner, rain, young man head down hand shaking, coffee set before him. She'd been 20, walking home from the library, seen him through the glass and something in how he sat made her stop, made her enter, made her sit across from a stranger because he looked like a man running out of reasons. Whatever you're thinking of doing, she'd said quiet, it can wait till morning. Jay closed his eyes one beat. When he opened them, they shone and he didn't hide it. That line's why I'm alive, he said. That voice is why I'm standing here. Not because I think you need saving, but because you saved me. I've carried that debt every day for 7 years. Rachel leaned on the doorframe. The fight left her, not because she lost, but because she set it aside. Anger, armor, the wall she'd held with both hands since he re-entered her life. Let it rest, just a moment, long enough to breathe. His name's Kieran, she said low, raw, no preamble. Was with him 3 years. Never hit me. Didn't need to. He just talked and talked and talked till I forgot what my own voice sounded like, till I stopped arguing, till I stopped leaving the apartment, till I looked in the mirror and the woman looking back wasn't one I recognized. Jay didn't move. Listened like he did at the restaurant. Holy, like her voice was the only sound existing. Left him 2 years ago. Packed a bag at 4 a.m., walked out, didn't look back. Rebuilt everything. Apartment, job, school, Elijah, my name, my face, my voice. Her chin trembled once. She reined it. And then he walks into my kitchen. I froze. He was there 6 minutes and I was her again. The small version, the quiet version he made. She met his eyes, wet, furious, honest like she hadn't been with anyone in years. That's why I can't do this, she said. Because letting someone in means giving them power again, making me small again. I'd rather be alone the rest of my life than feel what I felt in that kitchen. The silence after was vast. Filled the hallway like silence fills a room after someone speaks the truest thing they've ever said. Heavy, sacred, that quiet you don't break because breaking it would be its own violence. Jay looked at her. She looked at him. Two people standing in a hallway with all the walls between them finally lying on the floor. You're not small, Rachel, he said. You never were. Not 7 years ago, not in that diner, not now. She pressed her lips hard. One tear fell. She swiped it fast, angry at it for being. They stood there long. No one moved. No one spoke. Building hummed around them. Light from her apartment gilded the hall gold. Then Rachel stepped aside, not full, just enough to let him pass if he wanted, enough to say what her voice couldn't. Jay stepped in. She shut the door behind him. They sat at her kitchen table. No tea, no food, no pretense, just two people in a quiet apartment and between them nothing but truth. And for the first time in 7 years, neither sat alone. Elijah called her from school Tuesday. His voice was off, not scared. Exactly, Elijah had too much of their father to sound scared, but tight, restrained, the voice of a boy trying hard to sound like a man. He was outside the school, said Elijah. Just standing there, by the fence. Didn't say anything. Just watched me. Rachel's hand clenched the phone till the case creaked. She was in the break room at work. She'd come back 4 days after that hallway night. No explanations, no apologies. Elijah asked for neither. She pressed her back to the wall, shut her eyes, and felt something move through her body. And it wasn't fear. It was rage. Not the shaky, helpless kind she'd felt with Karen in her kitchen. Not the kind that turned inward and became shame. This was different. This was clean. This was the fury of a woman who'd survived everything a man could do to her spirit, and had one line left he couldn't cross. He'd crossed it. Go inside, she said. Stay in the building. I'm coming. Didn't call Jay. Didn't tell anyone where she was going. Untied her apron, folded it on the break room table, slipped out the back door, and took the train across the city jaw set, hands still in her lap, and the calm that settled over her she recognized. Same calm as the diner, same stillness that came when a gun aimed at her face and the place inside her that quieted when everything else roared. Not numbness, but decision. She'd chosen what to do, and there was nothing left to fear. Found Kieran 3 blocks from school. He leaned on his car like a man with nowhere to rush. Relaxed, casual, same smile, same pose saying the world was his and everyone in it just rented space. Saw her coming. Smile widened. Opened his mouth to speak, to drop some version of charm or control or casual cruelty he'd prepped, and Rachel stopped 6 feet off and spoke first. You're not allowed to talk, she said. Her voice level, firm. The diner voice, the one that made the robber drop his gun, the one buried under 3 years of Kieran's weight and now standing open air, unbroken. Came to my house. I let that slide. My mistake. But you don't go near my brother. You don't stand by his school. You don't exist in the same space as him. Not today. Not ever. The smile faded slow, not sudden, the way a man's confidence goes when he realizes the person in front of him isn't the one he remembers. Rah, I'm not done. Didn't raise her voice. Didn't need to. The woman you knew is gone. You didn't kill her. She outgrew you. And the real woman is here, right now, and she'll dismantle everything you've got. Your name, your rep, every corner of your life if you go near Elijah again. I don't need a man to do it. Don't need money. Don't need help. I just need you to look at me and get that I mean every word. Held his gaze. Didn't blink. Didn't waver. Stood on that sidewalk, wind riffling her jacket, city noise around them, and let him see exactly who she was. Not the girl he'd met at 23, vulnerable. Not the woman who'd flinched in her kitchen 6 days back. That was done. Kieran looked at her long. Jaw working. Hands fisting at sides. Hunting her face for the crack he always found, the one he always pressed till it gave. Hunted and found nothing. Got in his car. Drove off. Didn't look back. Rachel stood on the sidewalk breathing slow, even. When adrenaline hit 3 seconds later in a wave starting at her knees and cresting her chest, she took it standing because she was done falling. Turned. Elijah was there, not close, across the street leaning on a wall, hands in pockets like he'd handled everything, like the world could take its time because he wasn't going anywhere. Didn't come to her. Didn't check on her. Just was there. Present, visible, a man standing backdrop to someone else's win, because he knew the difference between fighting for someone and being thereafter. Rachel looked at him across the street. He looked back. City moved between them. Cars, people, noise, life. Neither moved. She crossed. Stopped in front of him. And she didn't say thanks. Didn't explain. Didn't ask how he knew where she was or why he came or what he'd heard. Said, "Want coffee?" Jay's face did what it almost never did. Corner of his mouth twitched. Not a smile, not yet, that almost from 7 years back, that almost from the night she corrected him in front of his staff, that almost living in the space between who he was and who he was becoming. "Yeah," he said. "I do." They walked into a diner together. Not the robbery one. Not the 7 years ago one. A new one, small, with vinyl booths and bad lighting and coffee that tasted 3 hours old. Rachel slid behind the counter like it owned her. Old reflexes, muscle memory from 1,000 shifts. The real waitress side-eyed her but didn't stop. Rachel poured 2 mugs. Set one in front of Jay. Kept one for herself. He sat on the stool. She stood at the counter. Fluorescents hummed. Rain started outside, streaking the windows like 7 years ago, in another diner, another city, when a girl too young to be that strong sat across from a stranger too broken to ask for help. She didn't remember his face from that night, but remembered the feeling. The quiet pull inside saying stay. The instinct saying the man at the table was worth an hour of her time even when she had nothing to lose. That instinct was still there. Survived their parents' deaths. Kieran, years of silence, rebuilding. Survived because it was her truest part, the part no one could take. Jay sipped his coffee. Rachel sipped hers. World outside was loud, dangerous, complicated, full of men like Kieran and empires like Jay's and systems that chewed women like Rachel and spat them out smaller than they started. But here were just 2 people at a counter, 2 mugs, and the sound of voices that once saved a life and now learned, slow and careful, on their own terms, to save themselves. No empires. No thrones. No salvations. Just Rachel Brown, whole, standing, choosing to let someone stay. If this story touched your heart, if you felt every silence, every wall, every moment Rachel held her ground when the world tried to make her small, then don't let this be the end.